Good morning. It appears we have a quorum, so we're ready to start the meeting. I'll call it to order, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from April 7th, 2022. Moved by Dave, seconded by Sue. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Danielle, let's start with department request, buildings and grounds, coming through government ops.
Okay, we have two seasonal backfill part-time laborer positions.
Why don't you go through them all, maybe we can do them as a package.
Okay, and a part-time backfill, regular part-time laborer backfill.
Okay. And a building maintenance?
And a building maintenance helper backfill.
Okay, all standard stuff, all approved through government ops?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion. Dave, second. Sue, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public Works.
So DPW, this is a little bit of a cascading, so I can do them all if you want again in the
Since they're all
same
sort
one.
of networked together.
Right, so the principal account clerk, we do need a backfill, but she would like to backfill with a bookkeeper. And then with that promotion, it would be a backfill of a senior account clerk, which would leave an opening to backfill actually and create a new position of a principal account clerk part-time.
Right, and so this would require to go to the full board.
For staffing
Because
patterns.
we're making some changes here then.
Yep,
Okay, and this was all approved through Public Works?
it was.
Okay. Entertain a motion to move these. Dave, Sue? Discussion. Hearing there is none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay.
The next one is for the district attorney. He did bring to his committee. It is for a new position of assistant district attorney, and he did receive funding for this position.
Right, district attorney. This would add an ADA to the staffing pattern, so this again goes to the full board.
Yes,
Okay. This came through public safety.
yes.
Question before you, I'll make a motion for discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Cassie has a second?
So, we have funding for this year, what happens to it next year?
We had funding for last year that we didn't use.
Okay.
He didn't hire anybody, so some of that rolled back into fund balance. We got funding for this year for way more than what it's gonna cost us, and it actually, wish Al was here to understand this. It goes through 2 of our years, their fiscal year, our calendar year, so it would be funded for all of this year, all of next year, and when the time comes that we get cut that funding, we'll have a choice to make, either to cut that position or find a different way to fund it. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, John?
Well, after 2 or 3 years go by, when the funding's up, and say we don't get any more funding, what do we have to do to get rid of that?
We can eliminate it from the staffing pattern. Or we can fund it, or the district attorney's office can change their structure and their budget to keep it budget neutral and fund it a different way. But that'll be our decision.
Okay, it'd be our decision, if the funding stops, we can take that position away?
Yes. I believe we received $193,000 last state fiscal year. In this fiscal year, we're receiving how much? It's several hundred thousand.
We don't know the number, we don't know how much actually goes to his office, so I'm not even sure what's there or if there's a number covered. I don't know, but it's the same as for Al Herring paying for public defenders. If they quit paying that, we're gonna have to make a choice as to where that goes, because it's a huge sum of money if they put it all in the county.
Exactly. But, like I said, we received $193,000 last year. This is $73,000 this year. So we anticipate the funding should easily cover this position for a couple of years. But it will be, if it disappears, John, you're right, we have to decide, well, we're gonna do this.
It won't won't take an act of Congress to do with it.
No, just an act of.
That's just the board.
Which would, the act of Congress might be easier. That's the way it works here.
Further discussion, Daryl, did I see your hand up? No. No, he's listening to ESPN radio on his headphones. Okay.
I'm just wondering, is my microphone working? These are new wireless things, so I'm testing them out.
Yeah. It's working.
It works.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
The next one is for our public defender. It's an assistant public defender backfill due to a resignation.
Right, straight backfill. Moved by Dave, seconded by Jay. Any discussion on the PD? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
For social services, I do have 2 additional backfills on top of the caseworker backfill. So the first one is a caseworker, backfill due to a resignation. Did you want me to go?
So that's the one that came through committee?
Yes.
But since then, you've had 2 others.
Since then, yes, I've had 2.
Okay, so let's do that one first since they came through committee.
Mm-hmm.
Entertain a motion on the first
Move
caseworker.
it. Move it.
Dave, Cassie. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, and then you've got 2 since the last HHS meeting.
Yes. So one is a senior social services examiner position, and this would be due to a resignation.
Are these all ones that come in, or so does somebody move up and you have to backfill another spot? Are these all cascading, or are these entry levels?
This one is, let me see. This one is just a straight backfill.
The social service examiner is probably a result of it, right?
Yes, the
Yeah.
social services examiner would be moving up into this position, which would be that backfill, yeah.
And it'd be filled when the resignation occurs.
Yes.
Moved by Brian, seconded by Sue. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So then it is the backfill of the social services examiner
Right, those are the
due
ones.
to the resignation.
Okay.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Daryl and Cassie? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That was all that I had.
Wait, there was no others? I thought we had others. No others?
No, that's.
Wow, okay.
You should have them off.
Wow. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to come before the Personnel Committee at this time? If not, I'm adjourning, right, Deb?
Okay, yeah.
Do I just leave it open so Brian can come up here, or do I have to push any buttons? Oh, good. I don't want to push any buttons.
You referring to the show?
No, I thought there was something else
Oh,
out there.
no.
We're gonna leave.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That's what I thought. All right,
You couldn't hire them because it wouldn't be available.
Yep.
yeah.
I didn't break it. That's a good thing.
Good morning.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'll call the finance meeting to order. First motion of business will be to accept the April 7th, 2022 minutes. Moved by John Rozell, second by Kathy Fedler. discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Real property, corrected tax bill refunds, I think that's just for our information. I think those are under the limits. So that's the first sheet you got. What's the minutes? I said these are in order. Okay. Gotta make the effort to connect, we'll have her talk about her refunds.
Yes.
Oh,
Didn't go well.
didn't go well, huh?
Easy to walk over someday.
Yeah,
Get direct connected.
especially when the refunds look like they're pretty correct, you know, they're under the, we don't have to act on them anyway, you're just gonna fill us in on them, right?
Just basic information, that, did three refund applications, one was based on the nation's exemption, strange fact, there was another Virginia Henry in the town that passed away, and and then, BOCES had, done a correction, they wanted to remove some penalty added, on their, sewer levy for the property, that they own, and, the other one was an ag exemption, where the ag exemption had been taken away in error, and the farmer should receive the ag exemption.
Okay.
Is that all just for ag exemptions, $415?
Yes, for county purpose, he also received it for schools, that's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
I have a question for Laura.
Okay, go ahead.
Off topic.
Yep.
Just so I'm clear on this whole thing regarding the star, because we get a ton of questions at the town. There are two kinds of star, right? An exemption, and then some people get a check.
Correct.
And they're trying to transition towards a check, I would guess.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
unofficially, yes.
Unofficially, yes. Is there something about if you are delinquent in your taxes,
Yes.
then you're not eligible for the exemption or for the check or both?
Both. And they did away with that because of COVID, but they're reenacting that now, and there were some letters that went out,
Yeah.
and the letters were not correct. There were some people that had paid their tax, but after a certain date. Throughout all of New York, there were some issues with those letters, so it wasn't just Washington County, but we did have some issues with the letters.
The state sent the letters out.
The state, New York State Department of Tax and Finance sent the letters out.
And when is the cutoff date that if you didn't pay your taxes by, you lose your star? Is it
Well, it was supposed to be delinquent for last year's taxes.
oh, not for 2022,
Correct,
for 2021?
correct.
I didn't understand that part. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
We were just getting.
Well, what happens
I wanna make sure I get it all straight.
The treasurer sent the file, there was an issue with the file that was sent, but then the letters also had some issues with them because the, location of the properties were mixed up with addresses, and it wasn't just our county, it was multiple counties throughout New York State that were issues with those letters, yes.
Okay, so if I got a letter saying my 2021s weren't paid, but my 2021s were paid, I can verify that.
Yep. Call
Then
the
do I have to
treasurer.
go to my assessor to say, hey, make sure I get this exemption, or?
What'll happen is the treasurer will submit another file prior to us printing the school bills, and that file will be applied, so, and they will, then they'll
Okay.
remove their star at that point. But no, there was an issue with those letters.
Okay.
Just off of that, if you got the letter, is your star being removed and need to be reinstated, I guess? How is that work?
Well, we didn't remove any stars based on those letters.
Well, are they removing them though?
No,
That's
they
what
are
I-
not.
Okay.
No.
But
And
Since they sent the letter, I
they
wanted to.
have a certain deadline to pay their, if they had delinquent taxes, truly had delinquent taxes, they were given a deadline to pay their taxes by, and then after that, the treasurer submits another, file to New York State Department of Tax and Finance. And that file that's submitted is the one that keys us to either remove the exemption off the parcel, or the state will take it off, and then we get a file from the state to notify people that are getting the check. So,
So it's not at the town level that this is fixed, it's at the county/state level?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
If
So what-
anybody calls, have them call us, and we can,
What's that deadline date? It's probably in the letter,
it says a letter, I don't have the letter right here.
but that's important too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
I know
good.
there were a rash of calls, and there were some issues with that. We did have, Al's office, the treasurer's office did confirm that taxes were paid, for some of the people, and so.
Perfect, no, that's good to know.
Yep.
Thank you, just want to get that clear.
Yeah.
Well, there's other things, thanks for that. Just have something else. Before we go into the resolutions, I just want to update you, the state budget. I got a text from Al from, his finance meeting, maybe it's an email, that they actually took, he thinks they actually took AIM out of for the village, out of our March, or our May, sales tax. So we don't know if that was because of the time frame it covers, or if there's a drop dead date. So we don't know the reality of when that actually goes away. We're trying to sort through all this. I've called NISAC because of a letter we got on Hudson River, Black River, that's a 5-year contract and really doesn't go away till after 2024. So it'd be so we're trying to get everything substantiated. So the way that is, there's legal concerns, and I haven't had the chance to share the letter with Roger yet, but because it was a legal matter and the way it was settled, all the budget did was move the money. The legal stuff is still in place. So what it says is they'll pay up to the 3.1 or 2 million, whatever it was, collectively of the 5 counties. But if say they doubled their budget and it went to 6.4, we would be paying the same amount because we'd be paying the 3.2. So that's really convoluted. Nothing like any of us were told, same as the Village AIM. It sounded like that was not coming out of our sales tax, and Al sent me an email that says it did, and I assume he probably heard more of that at finance school is probably why he sent it. But until I talk to him, I don't know. But just to give you an update that some of the things aren't as real as we think they are, and maybe it's just timing, and maybe they are real in next year's budget, but they sure as heck weren't with this
So
year.
the village fiscal year is different than the
Yeah.
fiscal year. So that amount is significantly less than the 294,000, which is the big,
Right, it was like 95 or something.
is it that much?
Yeah, it was reasonably. So where that's all at, just letting you know that until we find out what's real, we don't know what they passed in the budget, even though they thought they knew. So that's where we're at. Okay. So resolution A is Youth Bureau for Rural Communities. It's MOU with Warren County and sharing the funding. So, is there a motion to move that? Moved by Sue, second by Cassie. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay. Resolution B is to amend Office for the Aging budget to purchase a utility vehicle for the nutrition program. Is there a motion
So
for
moved.
that? Moved by
Second.
Darrell, second by Cassie. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, resolution C is to amend the budget for Adult Protective Services grant. Is there a motion for that?
So
Move
moved.
it. Second.
Second. Yep.
Okay, by Cassie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Resolution D is amend the 2022 budget for Home Energy Assistant HEAP Administrative allocation. Need a motion for that. Moved by Cassie, seconded by Sue. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Carried. Okay, resolution E is budget for foster care and child care. This is to make that money real that we, moved from ARPA. Motion, moved by Sue, second by Cassie and Dave. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution F, sewer district number 2 budget for engineering planning grant. Motion for that one. Moved by Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Darrell Wilson. Any discussion on the planning grant? favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay, resolution G is authorize interfund funds from general fund to capital project 114 sewer district number 2 long-term control plan. And this is according to whether they actually close before or not. This may happen, may not happen. It just has to be in place in case they don't close before the date, but they are on a timeline where it's possible they could. So I need a motion for that.
So
By
moved.
Dave, by
Second.
Darrell, Cass. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, resolution H is for probation. It's the live scan, fingerprinting. Is there a motion for that? Moved by Dave O'Brien, second by
Second.
Darrell Wilson. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Resolution I is to amend the county road fund budget for, CHIP rollover funds. Moved by Jay Skelly, second by John Rozell. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, resolution J is to set time and place for public hearing on introductory local law C of 2022. The motion, is there a second? John Rozell's gonna second. Roger, did you want to speak to this, as to what's in it, not in it, or what options we should want in it or not in it, if there is something different that somebody wants?
All right, so what's in it, in the law, is basically what's in the state law. So the devil is in the details of what your policy is going to be. The state law and this local law requires you to set up a policy. And the meat of the policy that's the question here is really what constitutes extraordinary circumstances and who decides. So the local laws, and I didn't know if we were going to have further conversation on this whole thing going down the road. The local law states right now, as it's written, that the chairman of the board and or the chairman of the committee decides what extraordinary circumstances are, if they aren't one of those things that's listed in the state law. So that's where we're at right now. But the rest of it is purely the state law. The state law says you can do it in these situations, and so we took the state law and we said, okay, that's our law, but then there has to be a policy. And the policy, I would assume you'd want a thing in there about how, because for Debbie's purposes, how far in advance does it have to be? How far, who do you notify? When do you notify? Things like that. But that's all going to have to be hashed out in your policy, not in this local law. The only question in the local law is who decides what those emergent circumstances are.
Basically, if we don't pass this law, we have to go back to what it said in the old law before COVID started.
Correct.
That's a lot less flexible than this one is.
Well, this one's not as flexible. It's not as flexible as what we're doing now.
Yeah.
No, I think.
Just so we understand that, right?
Before COVID.
Right, and you can always, at some point, it's not like there's a deadline to do this. You could do it next year as long as nothing changes between now and then.
I just want to make sure I have kind of a basic understanding here. So what I'm thinking is, under this situation of what we're looking at here, the quorum will have to be in the room,
Correct.
but everybody on the committee can take part through teleconferencing if they
If
wish.
there's a quorum in the room, others can, if they meet the extraordinary circumstances test. It's not just, I'm not feeling like coming in today, it's a long drive, I'd like to not come to the meeting. There has to be extraordinary circumstances.
Okay, and then on the other part of that is, if we do it that way and they meet those, they don't have to give their address or anything like that.
The public part of it's
The public can come
Right,
here.
the public can come here.
So, but you can't just stay home and Zoom in or wherever you are and Zoom in.
Right.
There has to be a reason.
A clarification on that. If they know they're not gonna be here, they have to provide notice to Debbie first, don't they?
That's gonna be in your policy.
Right.
as to how, so the local law says you can use video conferencing. The hows and things like that are gonna be for your policy, because the local law says you also have to adopt a policy on video conferencing. All that's gonna be in your policy, the how. This is the yes, we can do it. Then you're gonna have to do the how are we gonna do it? How the notification's gonna work, when, all that kind of stuff is gonna have to be done, hashed out in your policy. So there's still another step if you pass the local law.
Well, I guess that was my question, Roger, this is the, in the egg, is that we're setting a public hearing for the local law, so that we'll take comments from the public and potentially pass a local law. But wouldn't that local law have quite a dependence on what the policy actually is, so we know what that is before I vote yes in the local law? Because if I vote yes in the local law and then the policy is wacko, I'm gonna feel.
I'm not sure you have that much leeway in your policy. Your policy's gonna be the mechanics of notification and things like, so that the meeting can be set up and so that the staff has time to make sure that people that are properly appearing by video conference are able to do so.
So how will I know as a member of the committee if there's gonna be a quorum in person to know whether I can zoom in or not?
So first of all, the only way you're zooming in is if you have a problem.
Oh, okay, then
right.
I'm gonna stop right there. So
Right.
I have to then tell Debbie that I have a conflict,
You have to say, I have an extraordinary circumstance.
right?
Well, as a matter of fact, unless it's one of the enumerated things, which there are very few,
Are they in the law or in the policy?
they're in the law.
In the law.
Right, and I don't have my copy of the law up here in front of me, but they're in the law, okay?
Oh, disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or other significant unexpected factor or event which precludes members' physical attendance at a meeting. So
Right.
if I'm on vacation in Savannah, that's probably not gonna cut it, is it?
Unless your flight got canceled.
I'm probably, right, I'm gonna agree with you on that. However, again, who's gonna decide that that's not gonna cut it is,
Right.
In the policy or in
is
the?
in the law.
In the law. And that's,
I didn't print it.
the chairman or the committee chairman?
That's the way I wrote it.
So I can call up the committee chairman and say, Brian, hey, I'm in Savannah and I'm gonna stay for an extra couple of days. Can you let me zoom in? And Brian could say,
It's going to, I think you're gonna vote on what's on that day. If you're no anyway, might as well leave you out of the conversation.
So Matt,
I can't argue with you.
I put that in there as a placeholder.
Okay.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be both of those people, it could be one of those people,
Oh,
okay? But somebody has to decide what, because it says, or any other circumstance, that begs the question, who decides whether that any other circumstance meets the requirement of extraordinary?
well, if flight got canceled, you may say yes. If I just wanna stay because I'm having a good time, you may say,
But I mean, like, say the whole East Coast is shut down from a snowstorm or something, you're like, yeah, we understand, you know.
But so the real question again is, who decides? And the first one is always easy, as I've said to you a million times about all other decisions, the first ones are always easy, and then you're sliding down the proverbial slippery slope to whatever. So, but remember, the whole point of this thing is default quorum present in a public place. Then if you have an emergency, we'll let you video in.
okay.
Or an extraordinary circumstance, I don't want to call it emergency, those may be two different things. An extraordinary circumstance, then we'll let you video in and vote, as long as there's a quorum.
Is this indefinite, or can the state 2 years from now supersede and say, no, I
Well, they
can't?
can change their minds to change it again, I mean, this is a
State
change,
changes their mind all the time.
So,
State and a half.
If this is a law, it has to be enforced, so if somebody violates, the sheriff does it, is this a misdemeanor?
no, there's no, what'll happen is you'll get an Article 7, the first time Matt wants to extend his vacation in Jamaica, and, he's the key vote, and somebody will file an Article 78 saying, whoop, you didn't have enough votes to pass that.
Well, yeah, I think if you acted on something that was really important, now it's struck down, or can be, because you violated the rules.
And we'll be in court deciding what was an emergency or an extraordinary circumstance and what wasn't.
Give you bail.
Right.
So, the question is that for emergency circumstances,
Extraordinary.
extraordinary circumstances, thank you. Does that have to be published with Debbie, like, Maddox isn't gonna be here?
No, but there should be it doesn't have to be published, but there should be a record of what that extraordinary circumstance is, so that when somebody comes along and says, why is Matt Hicks coming in by video conference? The answer is there's one flight a day out of wherever he is, East Oshkosh, and the plane didn't come, versus I don't know why Matt Hicks didn't get here.
So talk about Matt being in Florida or Alabama, wherever he is, and there won't be enough to have the quorum here.
If you don't have a quorum here, it doesn't matter.
Hold on a second, but Debbie could publish that location where he's at, and if he's there in person, that would qualify, correct?
Yeah, but that takes time.
That's playing games, and I wouldn't play
Your
that game.
policy's gonna have to.
Because if Matt can't get out, probably nobody else can get in.
Right, and you wouldn't have time, to publish that either.
Right, you'd have a
See, if
problem.
you're gonna do that, you gotta be able to,
He knew it wasn't gonna be here.
that's not an extraordinary.
If you've got more than one shell you're moving around, it's not worth it.
Check us out.
And we can play what if till the cows literally come home, but it is what it is.
So, my question is, what do we need this law? We just get back to where we attend the meetings, but we should.
You don't.
Why we go through all the problems?
Should we then, as we get meeting notices from Sandy and Debbie, let them know, I'm gonna be here in person? Isn't that gonna make their world a lot easier? If they know they're gonna get 6 out of 7 people here, then it's one criteria. Then if they don't know who's coming and who's
I'm
not
not gonna
coming.
put Debbie on the spot, but I kinda like to think you're already doing that. Don't answer that question.
So Debbie, if I'm not going to. Yeah, I always,
Right.
if I'm not coming
Right.
here, like, when I get the Zoom thing, I don't
Right.
put decline or accept if I plan on coming in here, basically.
I'm gonna defer to her, and that again could be in the policy, but it would seem it would be much easier if I was doing it. I'd like to make sure I've got a darn quorum before, because if I don't, it doesn't matter. If I don't have enough people here, unless you're all gonna go to your town halls, and again, this would have to be, and Mr. O'Brien's right, the quorum can consist of a bunch of people in a bunch of public places, if it comes to that, but the whole goal is to have everybody in the same place.
Okay, now if we've developed all that, and we're here, and we have the quorum in the room, and we have 1 or 2 committee members, whatever, on Zoom, and they vote,
Yes.
count, they do,
They
can
do, as
vote,
long as you have a
and they do
quorum,
count. Okay.
quorum present, and they
important
meet
to
the
me.
criteria, they can vote. That's the whole point.
They meet the criteria because the chairman or the committee chairman said they meet the criteria.
Well, whoever decides the policy, yeah.
Right, whoever you decide in the policy. Well, if you want to change it now, because remember, the local law is the local law. So right now, I have those 2
I think it should be the
people.
chairman, just because.
So,
Don't you?
You were saying?
There has to be another one.
No, I would think the chairman of the board should
Right.
decide, because if that
Then the
person's
vice
not
chair
available,
decides.
the vice chair fills in for him, so you have in other words, if it's the chairman of the committee and the chairman of the committee, then I guess the next one up would decide, but I would think that should be higher up, that's just my belief.
that's really the only, so Mr. Rozell's right, the first decision you have to make is, do you want to embark on this magical journey?
Well, that's all.
The other thing, because
And then the second question is, if you do, in the local law, the only question in the local law is, the only thing you can really change is who decides. Right?
I was gonna talk to John's point. The law is forcing more and more people internally to come in to establish one, that's all he said. I think we have to be cognizant of people who live in Putnam or
Those aren't-
Wake Creek.
those aren't, extraordinary circumstances.
Let me finish, please. They're able to attend via Zoom for whatever reason, they're farmers, as long as they qualify.
That's not an extraordinary
As
circumstance.
long as they qualify.
But the 2 things you mentioned don't qualify.
But you didn't let me finish, Brian.
Okay.
I was saying, if they qualify for extraordinary circumstances, they'll be able to attend the meeting, whereas for other reasons they couldn't. We're encouraging people to participate, and that's why we should be providing it. Even if they don't establish member quorum, they could still attend, even though they couldn't vote.
So
so that's a separate issue.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Who makes the decision on extraordinary circumstances?
That's, in the laws it's written now, the chairman of the board, it says and/or, the chairman of the committee. That's how it's written, and that's what you have to, or some other person, I wouldn't want to do it as a staff member, but, you could delegate that to somebody else.
So, at this point right now, if this law was in effect, Darrell, Cassie, they would not be able to attend
Absolutely.
by Zoom and have a vote.
Right.
How do we get that, the extraordinary circumstances in this law? They would not be able to attend or would not be able to vote.
Correct.
Unless Darrell has COVID and Kathy's got a broken leg, then they finish, but.
They won't be a member of the committee that can participate and vote. They can watch it on live stream just like everybody else.
And can they voice their opinion, but their vote won't count?
All right, so now we're off to the second issue, which is not addressed by this local law. This local law addresses members of the body, and members of the committee are members of the committee. And the rest of you folks who aren't members of the committee are, in the opinion of the Committee on Open Government, no different than Joe Blow from Kokomo, who might want to come and watch. So if there's no provision for public speaking, then you do not have to provide provision for anybody but members who are duly qualified to participate. If you provide opportunities for public speaking, and that includes Joe, and it includes non-members of the committee, then you have to provide an opportunity for everybody to speak and comment at the meeting.
Is that at the discretion of the chairman of the committee? Because that's the way it's been before.
Nope.
So
Because
what if
when
they
you're-
allow Tony to speak on some topic, and he's not a member of the committee?
He's not, but he's a staff member who's being, just like I'm not a member of the committee, and yet I'm unfortunately extensively talking right now. So that's not the case. It's an invited presentation is an example. But if you,
Okay, I'm devil's advocate.
Okay.
Something got passed through HHS.
right,
And it comes to Brian in finance. I'm not on finance, but I'm at HHS. There was discussion at HHS. I raised my hand to say, I want to discuss this, and Brian says, no, I may have something to contribute from the HHS
you're
discussion.
not on finance.
I'm not on finance.
He can allow it, but then if anybody else wants to comment,
I have to allow them to.
you have to allow them to.
Okay, thank you.
But, so that goes back to the teleconference.
What do you mean
You
you
have
have
to
to
let
provide an
everybody,
oppor-
you have to
Right.
let everybody talk on teleconferencing, if I'm letting you talk on teleconference.
So you have to provide an opportunity for all those people to talk if they want to. So right now, we don't allow the way we're set up now is we allow all the members of the board to come in through Zoom, but we don't, everybody else who wants to watch it, watches it. So think about the old room, and the members of the committee sit at the table, right? The hot seat, what we call the hot seat, the table, the chair at the end is the invited chair, please come up and talk, department head, Tony, me, whoever. And then there's the people around the outside. There is no distinguishing between the people around the outside, whether they are Lynn, the citizen from someplace, or Cassie, the supervisor from someplace. They're all the same. So if you're gonna let one person raise their hand that sits on the outside, then you're gonna, and ask a question or make a comment, then you're gonna let everybody who sits on the outside.
Hey, Tony, this is worse than Discovery.
If you're doing it electronically, then you're doing it, it's the same,
Bob Hinkey.
regardless.
Okay, I had a comment, but I think Cassie had her hand up for quite a while there too. No? Okay. I understand this, the problem with if one can speak, they all can speak and everything, but we've taken some technological strides here. We've got a way for more people to participate in these meetings. I think we ought to make every effort we can at least to use the technology we've been given here. We'd be ashamed to have the ability to do things and not do them. The fact that we might be a little bit twitchy about stuff, I think we ought to least do our best to use the new technology as much as we can. Make it as valuable to us as possible. It is a tool. And it's a tool we ought to be able to try to figure out how we can use it best. I understand the dangers and the problems, and maybe I don't want to let some people talk at random, but, on the other hand, if it lets Matt, who has something valuable to say, to participate in our deliberations and our decision-making, and he happens to be in Louisiana, or where we're going on vacation this year.
He's all over the board now.
I know.
It's every state in the South, at least other than
Few
Oshkosh.
states he's missed, I'm trying to give it to him.
That gets around.
But, it'd be a shame not to have that input. I think that would bother me not to have that input. But the second thing I wanted to make is that, since you've ignored me for the past 10 minutes, I'm trying to say, I agree with Brian. I think that the decision about extraordinary circumstances and things ought to be the chairman of the board, not the chairman of the committee. If he's not here, then obviously it's the vice chair.
And I guess the chairman could use, whoever the chairman is at any given time. I mean, you're going years in the future here. I think they could, if they wanted to actually talk to the chair of the committee, they could. If they didn't want to, they could. I mean,
was gonna say, if I were chair, I would not make that decision. Probably will talk to the chair of the committee and say, hey, this is going on, but it's just stylistic, you can do it or not.
so in what you're saying, if we were allowing any supervisor to speak, you'd also have to allow the public to speak also this way, but like if somebody is unruly and really out of sorts here, we can have them removed from the chambers. Do we have a button to remove them from the screen if it's really off color and out of the realm? See, I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't take Dana off.
Well, Dana's never out of realm. Are you, Dana?
It was a beautiful day until just now, Bob. He does it directly at me. I'm gonna challenge with his soulless eyes, he looks right at me.
Were you gonna add something?
I'm gonna add a lot. One, the thing about exceptional circumstances, somebody's gonna, approve it or deny it, violate Brown versus the Board of Education. It does not treat everyone equally. We were elected to represent our citizens here, so we are not Joe Blow from Kokomo. For one, why can't this be a policy of the board rather than a law? In the beginning of the year, we have an organizational meeting where we have rules of our meeting, how we conduct our meetings. Quite a few years ago, I wanted to change the rules to make it where you had to remove your hat at a meeting, because somebody always came in late, so they wouldn't have to remove their hat with a sewn in toupee.
Was it a mega hat?
During the Pledge of Allegiance. The new thing is ultra mega hat.
Okay.
So I have a problem with this. Also, to me, this is almost written cynically because this is a way to allow video conferencing in the most restrictive manner possible. Roger's nodding his head. Why is this written in the most restrictive manner? If you're going to do something, do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Don't do it, but write the rules so restrictive that your ultimate goal is to don't accomplish what you wanted to do.
So back where John Rozelle was, why even bother?
I think this thing should be, instead of extraordinary circumstances, that if you just cannot come, that's the number one rule. And Brian, you said that the circumstances are limited to these things. No, it's not. It says right here, extraordinary circumstances including, but not limited to.
Right. Because there could be something you didn't think of. Yeah, there could be
Because as soon as you figure out criteria, you're gonna find something that you never
There'll always be
expected.
a loophole.
Never be expected. So I think that this should be rewritten to that if the, member cannot be present, period. Not extraordinary circumstances. I don't want somebody to decide because that makes us not equal anymore. And, you know, maybe the chairman and I have a dispute over something else, and then this is used as a vendetta. You know, this is where this becomes a problem. So I think this entire thing should be rewritten, make it less restrictive, like Bob said, to include more discussion. And this whole thing about, you know, oh, if you're not on the committee, you can't speak. I'm sorry, but the first time I'm not on a committee and I raise my hand to speak and I'm not allowed to speak, I'm gonna have a problem with that because I'm not being treated equally as an elected representative of the citizens of Hartford.
So can I respond?
Yeah, I want you to.
All right, so the only words that are changed from the state statute in this thing is the part where the chairman of the chairman of the committee decides. This is verbatim the language in the state statute. It cannot be changed by us. You're sitting in the wrong seat in the wrong town, unfortunately, to do that. If you want to do it, this is the method that's laid out in the public officers law and the open meetings law and the revision that was passed with the budget.
So you're saying we either adopt this or we do not?
Correct.
We cannot amend this?
Correct. The only wiggle room in this thing is the who decides part.
Well,
I wrote this by putting the text of the state law up on the screen and going like this.
This really
And changing the words public body to Washington County Board of Supervisors.
This really gives me credence to what General Zell
right,
said.
does the state law say exceptional circumstance?
Extraordinary circumstances, that is verbatim language, including those reasons.
Well,
Can't we flesh those out in our policy?
Yes.
rather than law.
I kind of agree with John too, because this is a slippery slope. If we get a real divisive, issue that comes up and somebody on the video is a decisive vote, or there's comments coming in on video from people or non-committee, and whoever is against this, whether public or one of us, is gonna go back through and check all the policy rules and everything, gonna say, wait a minute, there was somebody on there who didn't get to speak, or there was somebody, and I just think I don't know. I like to be, I can come up with extraordinary situations all summer long there, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in our best interest as far as a governing body to not be in person when you can, it's almost a governmental way to rig the system, which I don't like.
You functioned for 200 years without this.
Yeah,
Okay, right now that we were doing that,
Right.
what's wrong with that?
The authorization to do it this way is gonna end shortly.
Through the state.
Right, and then then it's being replaced by what you have in front of you.
And if we don't vote for this, we can make our own.
No, no.
We go back to the.
For video, no.
No, you're gonna have open meetings law, and this is gonna be part of open meetings law, I believe, right?
This is the new open meeting.
Yeah.
If you want to use video, they replaced the old video conferencing section with this video conferencing section.
Doesn't go back to what was pre-COVID.
No,
It goes to this.
yeah.
So the audio is removed. It used to be, you could attend by audio, but now because it's video.
Well, you couldn't vote then either, right? I don't think we could vote.
No, not by audio, you couldn't vote by
You couldn't
audio,
vote
you
by
had to
audio.
have full face.
Now they're giving you as the so that's the only thing that's really changed. You would be able to vote in this circumstance.
And they're removing as Mr. O'Brien said, they're removing the public place exception. Now, if you had a quorum that consisted of a quorum of people in public, so if Cassie goes down to her town hall and it's announced ahead of time that among the places that the people can meet are at the town hall in this is White Creek, I apologize, Cassie, Cambridge, then she's good. She can participate, she can vote because she's in a public place that the public can attend, and you've got a quorum of members in accessible public places.
If she's got a legitimate reason to be there.
No, that, the extraordinary part applies if you're not physically in a public place. Okay?
Okay.
So, then you need an extraordinary circumstance to attend by video and vote.
But you still have to pass this law off in order to allow that.
Yes. Otherwise, you can be in a public place, but if you have a problem, you can't.
You're hiding in the corner of my screen.
We can always allow people to participate by video, live stream the meetings and allow everybody to participate by meetings. It's the voting part so the non-committee member could still come in, and it's just you're opening the door you have to open the door to everybody. I don't know if everybody's gonna come, but you have to open the door to everybody.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted just a couple of things. First of all, I agree with Dana. You know, we were all elected to represent the people in our town. And yes, we had no way that we did this, but we also don't mail a lot of letters out now because we can use the internet to send out our correspondence to each other. The individuals want to represent their town, and if they have a sickness or an injury that prohibits them from being here, they can still represent their town and participate by using the Zoom process. I know we haven't done that for years, and this was something that wasn't available before, but there are reasons that individuals may or may not be able to. We have people that are out currently now that are viewing here today that have had some surgery or whatever. They want to participate. They want to represent the people of their town, and they can't physically make it here. That doesn't mean they can't physically do the job. It just means they can't physically make it here. We have the technology to do that now, which we never had in the past. We do things on a day-to-day basis every day that we didn't do 20 years ago, but we now have the technology and the availability to do. And I agree with Dana on that we're here to represent the people. We need the opportunity to do that, regardless of where it may be, and whoever gives the authority to say that's a reasonable thing or not a reasonable thing. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good, Sam. I guess my question is, if this is the new open meetings law, are you saying that even if we didn't adopt the teleconferencing part and we were back in a regular meeting situation like right here or down the hall, that the people around the committee table, the committee members, are really the only ones that are allowed to speak?
If you're gonna allow non-members of whatever body is meeting to speak, you have to allow
everybody in the room.
in the room.
But once you do that with teleconferencing, you have to allow, if you allowed anybody in from the outside, it's a
The teleconferencing part of it's not relevant to your question. Your question was non-members.
Yeah.
Non-members are non-members are non-members.
just of the committee, there's still
According
members
to
of the board.
and this is an opinion, of the Committee on Open
Right,
Government.
no, I'm just trying to get that out,
Right.
as to what that actually
Right.
is. So a member of the Board of Supervisors does not denote you as a member of the Finance Committee.
Correct.
So when the Finance Committee meets, only Finance Committee members could speak no matter which place you're in?
Nope. Non-members. There's two kinds of people. There's members and there's non-members. Members speak. The chairman decides whether non-members speak. But if non-members speak, there's no delineation between what kind of non-member you are.
But if I
You know
was,
what I'm saying?
so, and that's why I'm taking it one step further. So if I have a non-member speaking, because they are on a different committee that's being addressed in finance, if I let them speak, I have to let non-members that are also on video speak.
Right. If they're on, so let's go back to pre-video. There's no video, right?
Right.
It's an easy way to think about it. There's no video. Everybody's in there, and this is a fairly new opinion that kind of happened, I think, either just before COVID or during COVID, where they said, otherwise, what they said was you have to, if you're letting everybody who's on the board participate, then that's a board meeting. So you better have a quorum of the board. Because if that's going to be your criteria, that only board members can participate, then you're having a board meeting.
Which wouldn't be a problem in finance, you probably do usually.
Probably do have a quorum of the board.
But when you get in the smaller committees, you
Right.
would not.
And I put on my extra armor today because I figured we'd be firing at the messenger rather rapidly. But this is the way they've put it out there. This is not, I didn't write this local law. I copied it, quite frankly, from the statute. And you're going to have to decide how to make it work within the realms of the statute. That's going to be your policy.
If we pass it.
If you pass it.
Right. Roger, you said that you copied this with the exception of the last sentence in section 3.
Right.
That who determines.
Right. It's silent in that law as to who determines.
I think that whole sentence should be deleted. I don't think anybody should determine. I think it's almost like an affidavit. If you tell Debbie, you cannot attend for exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. That's it, period. I don't think anybody should, because that's my crux of my problem with Brown versus Board of Education, not treating everyone equally, because now it's subjective to, does that person want to sign anything or not?
So then delete it. I'm more than happy to have you delete
I
it.
make a motion.
And then we'll decide that in Article 78 when the first one's filed, whether it was extraordinary or not. Hopefully I won't be here.
I made a motion to delete that sentence. The ramifications that we don't pass.
You go back to the old way, which is video, you can't vote. You can have all the video conferences you want, you just can't vote.
Unless you're in the room, which isn't all,
Right.
which isn't all bad either.
he can't vote or contribute, is that correct?
Well,
And you can't make up the quorum either.
if you contribute, you're now not a voting member because you're not meeting the criteria. So you're now a non-member.
But I thought this replaced that old law.
Please, what old law?
We talked about video conferencing. Video conferencing was allowed under the old law, but the new law replaces that, right?
Right. Video conferencing,
There is no law to go back to.
We don't act on it, we don't
Back
pass
to
it.
the old law, you can't go back to the old law because.
you can video conference if everybody's in a public place, and you announce where the public place is.
How long before the meeting do you announce where the public place is?
Well, when you put out the meeting notice, you're gonna have to put out the notice of where the meeting's being held. And where the meeting's being held has to be in a public place that's accessible.
My reading, this is John Roselle saying, if you wanna be part of this, get your butt in here and be here. And I'm reading Bob as saying, this new technology, this makes it more transparent, more open, let's try to use it as much as we possibly can. So we have both ends of the spectrum being represented on how we try to move forward here, right?
Well, no, we don't, because Brian never looks to the right when I raise my hand. I've had my hand up for 20 minutes. It just sits there.
I've been listening.
He needs glasses.
Go ahead, Mr. Hankey.
As representing my end of the spectrum.
We're just way over there.
Way over here, I'm Brian.
The right wing or the left wing?
And I find myself in complete agreement with Dana, but for a little bit different reason, I think. I don't have any objection whatsoever to the public commenting on our meetings and, you know, then being present with it. That's transparency. If we have to, if in order for Dana to be home, you know, on YouTube, we have to allow, you know, somebody, you know, one of my town councilmen who was texting me, by the way, about this, to speak, then let them. Who cares? The more input we have, the better. If somebody is out of line, you know, if I'm standing up and you know, calling Dana bad names, you can mute me and throw me out of the room too, you know, whether I'm here or not. So I don't have any objection to you know, extending this money to the public. If they're in the boardroom in there, we let them speak too. We sometimes not till after the supervisors do, but we still let them speak. It's no different. I think it's just new technology we can use to advantage.
So I have really good news for you. This is just to set the time and the place of the public hearing, and we can actually hear what the public think about it.
Well, that's true.
Before we ever announced it.
I was gonna mention that, but the people were on a roll. I didn't want to, you know.
Yeah, Dana, go ahead.
So I agreed with Sam right up until the point you said, regardless of who makes the decision, which should speak, but that seems consistent with what Mr. Half is saying. And I thought Dana Half made a motion. Did you make a motion, Dana, to strike that last sentence?
Yes, but I've been ignored.
All right, I would second that motion, and we can move this forward if the committee would do it.
Okay.
We already got a motion on the floor about the law, right?
We got a motion to set the time and place, so we're just amending it to move. So Dana's got a motion to amend to strike that one line, and Dana Hogan wants to second that motion. So is there any
Can I
discussion?
ask a question? Yeah, can I ask a question, Brian?
Certainly, Darrell, go ahead.
Just a question, because I don't understand the history behind it. So to Roger, this local law that we're proposing and the amendment would be to make it exactly as the state law. But I guess there's no purpose of having a local law if we're governed by the state law. The question I have is, do we currently have a local law on the books that we need to replace?
So I would agree with you. I have no idea why the state in its infinite wisdom said, you can do this, but only if you have passed a local law saying you can do this. That's what they did. So in
Okay.
order to do this, we have to pass a local law saying we can do this. Thus,
Yeah, I
this
thought we were-
local law.
Yeah, I thought we were
No.
governed by the state open meetings law.
And
but,
then it says, and passes a local law to this effect and adopts a policy.
I have a comment after the amendment is voted on. but I don't wanna.
Okay, so do we have discussion on the actual amendment to remove, can you read what that line was?
So remove it to the last sentence of section 3, the part says, the sentence says, such said extraordinary circumstances will be determined by the chairman of the board of supervisors and/or the chairman of the committee in the case of a committee meeting. Striking that.
Okay. So is there any discussion on that?
Yes, it is, doesn't the state law describe extraordinary circumstances?
It says exactly what you see in the sentence, except in the case of where I'm at here.
So it doesn't sound like we could change any of them if we strike that.
Well, you can add to it because it says,
We could,
any other significant or unexpected factor or event which precludes the member's
we
physical.
could add sleep baths.
In the policy.
All kinds of stuff, but.
Right, in the policy.
The point is, if there are extraordinary circumstances, there's one of two ways to determine that. One is by having somebody determine it, or B is by having the person essentially affirm to it. I'm not sure.
That's what Mr. Happ is saying.
Like an affidavit to affirm to it. You don't have to fill, send anything out, but by stating, I have an extraordinary circumstance, that's it. Dear citizen, right there.
Or put extraordinary circumstances, you also define to say, an elected official, because we're all extraordinary.
In your
I
mind.
could, yes, I could say, I've gotta go turkey hunting, but I'd be sick if I didn't.
That's called buck fever.
I don't think we have the League of Extraordinary Supervisors.
That'd be a good movie.
I think we just proved that.
Hold on.
Okay, so voting, all in favor say aye of the amendment.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed to the amendment? Very good, passes. Now back to the original, and we got Matt Higgins.
Just we're setting the public hearing for our June board meeting, and there is a government ops meeting between now and then. Why don't we have a chance to digest this and bring it up? I think it belongs to government ops, doesn't it?
You can start the policy discussion, but
And
we might
start
hear,
it heavily in government ops, then we get the public hearing at the board meeting. We don't have to pass it at the board meeting.
Right.
It can go into the next cycle if it has to be.
and
I'm
it's,
just saying, I don't think we're gonna get a result today. Let's work the process through a little bit.
Well, I
think if this goes back to government ops, that sentence would still be striked. Correct. Because that would be the new draft.
right.
Yeah,
It
it's
would
kinda
be-
weird that this is in finance.
The policy would be, the policy is what would be decided in government ops.
Do we have a deadline timetable?
The authorization that we're currently functioning under I think expires in mid-June. So,
Okay.
unless it's extended.
No, I thought it was May 15th was the.
I think it went to,
Debbie
had the date there.
I think it did get extended
May
one.
15th is the governor's, emergency declaration. The budget gave us
60 days from that, so,
to do a policy.
right,
So I guess it's the new,
yeah.
60 days from today.
Your timetable fits.
Fast, not.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not trying to drop in Kathy's lap, but,
We've got time.
well, yeah.
It can't be.
No, but if we're working on the policy, then we're already that farther along, and then when we hear from the public, there might be something we missed or make sure we don't wanna miss. So, that could be crucial time-wise.
Maybe it's the.
Do we have to have this law in place to work on the policy?
No,
One reason to do it.
no. Well, the law is the law is the law, so it sets your baseline for the policy. It's, cause it's how you're gonna implement it, how much notice needs to be given, things of that nature.
Yeah, you can have the policy all set when the law takes place, that's not a problem.
How are you gonna notify the clerk that you have an extraordinary circumstance, things of that nature.
I mean, just, you look at actual policy. If you do a form and be in a public place, you go back to executive session. Is the forum only here where we?
No, you can participate by video in executive session. If you qualify to participate in the meeting as a member, you qualify to participate in all aspects of the meeting as a member.
In a public space, outside.
No. If you qualify to video in, then you can participate by video in an executive session.
Yeah, and if you were in a public place, like if you were in the Salem Town Hall, right?
And you
you're
can
in the meeting,
right,
and you go to executive session, you can throw everybody out.
right, and participate and have the executive session, and just like, it's no different than being in this room.
Brian,
Go ahead, Kathy.
So I'll take the whole discussion. I'll save Brian from the chance of the longest meeting title, and you guys can move it back to government ops, because Jay was almost beating my long meeting, so I guess we'll move it back to government ops and I can retain the title.
I think we need
Retain the
to.
discussion today and put it on there.
Bearing in mind, I won't be at the next government ops meetings, I'll be at the county.
You wanna set that for a rainy day, Kathy?
Yes, a rainy day would be much better.
Depending on the season, on the sunny day might be an extraordinary circumstance.
So, all in favor of setting the time and date of the public hearing and the policy going to government ops, say aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed to that? Very good, thank you, that passes. Okay, resolution K is supplemental mortgage tax disbursements.
Chairman, so moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay.
That is both tables, isn't it?
Well, I think it did both.
Yeah.
It was all in one. Okay, so Larry's with us, so I assume he has something he wants to talk about, and I know the next one might take a lot more time, so I suggest that we go into executive session to talk to Larry. Right now, I assume on, whatever work we're doing with the unions negotiations would be my belief.
Yes, collective negotiations under the bill.
Okay. So, is there a motion to go into executive session to do
So
that?
moved.
Moved by Kathy, second by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We'll wait for the public to disappear, but we'll bring them back for our last discussion.